Okay, now it's streaming. Let me begin properly then. Yeah. So you are still able to see the iPad, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, good. So recall that we have been looking at folds. There are two versions: fold from the right and fold from the left. Fold right works like this. So you have an initial value and you have a function, and you want to combine the elements in your list via that function using that initial value. Okay. So FV of empty list is just V, because when there is nothing to combine, you just return the initial value. FV of x colon x is you recursively fold the tail with F and V, and then you apply the function F on the first element x here. Yeah, the first element x here, and the so the first element x here and the recursive value. Okay, so this is what you do. For instance, fold from the right of F and V on the list x1, x2, x3 will be F applied to x1 and the recursively computed value, which is F applied to x2, and the recursively computed value, which is F applied to x3V. Okay, and a nice way to remember fold right is that it is exactly like your construction of lists, except instead of the colon operator, you use the function F, and instead of the empty list, you use the initial value V. Okay, so a list access itself is built by taking the empty list as initial value and repeatedly applying the colon operator on a given list. Okay, so in some sense, fold R colon empty list xs equals xs is identity. Okay, so if you want to know, fold from the right of colon and empty list, these are your initial values on any list, equals L. So fold R colon empty list is nothing but ID. Okay, the identity function on lists. Okay, good. Okay, so this is fold right. Here are some examples. So these are basic examples. Sum is nothing but fold R of using the initial value 0 and the function plus. Okay, that's what you're doing here. For product, you use the initial value 1 and you use star multiplication as the thing. And yeah, just like xs is x1 colon whatever, you see that sum xs is nothing but instead of empty list, you use 0, and instead of colon, you use plus. Similarly, for product, instead of empty list, you use 1, and instead of colon, you use star. Okay, so this is the relationship. So fold R is most natural when you come to when it comes to Haskell, but it is not always the case that fold R is the most appropriate thing to use. And while we are looking at fold R, fold L, etc., I also introduced anonymous functions. Rather than having to give this thing a name, saying fold R FM0, instead you might just say fold R. It's not always convenient to come up with names for these things, so you just say fold R of lambda xn n plus 1. Okay, lambda xn means x and n are the arguments, and n plus 1 is the body of the function. Yes, and you don't need to give a name to every function. That is a function that takes 2 arguments and returns something which is defined by the body. Yes, and in this case, particularly since the x is not used, you might also be able to render this as fold R of not, don't care. The first argument, you don't care what it is. The second argument is n, and then the body is n plus 1. Okay, so you can give any pattern instead of a name for the arguments, and underscore is a very useful pattern. Okay, good. Okay, so yes, so we have looked at anonymous functions. You can also give a name to anonymous functions. You can say f equals the function that takes 2 arguments and returns n plus 1 in the body, which another way of a friendlier way of writing the first line is the second line, where you say f and then you give the 2 arguments and then you say n plus 1 is the body. Okay, great. Okay, here are more fold R examples. Fold R colon empty list of x's is identity, as I told you, and folder of this thing, folder of you have X and L and you put X at the end. If you do that, then that is actually reversing a list. Okay, so this thing is reverse of. Yes, we worked through this the other day. So if you have X1, X2, X3, you do recall that folder will recursively do, you do your F on the tail and then you combine it with the first element using the function that has been supplied to the folder. The function that has been supplied to folder takes two arguments. First argument is an element, second argument is a list. It will put the element at the end of the list. So the first argument is the recursive value. Element is the element that you are working with is the first element of the list, namely X1. Then you want to put that at the end of the recursive value. So F applied to X2, X3 plus plus X1. And this itself, if you recursively compute, it is this. And then you do that. And this itself is F applied to empty list plus plus X3. But that is nothing but the base case for the when you apply folder to an empty list, you will get the initial value is what you have to return. And the initial value here itself is a list. So you return the empty list. But this whole thing is nothing but X3, X2, X1. Okay. So this folder is being used to reverse. Okay. So there are several cute things that you can do with folder. Many things are you write and sit and write explicit recursions. You can just use folder with very well chosen functions and get what you like. Okay. F is just reverse, but it takes time proportional to n squared because every time you reverse a list and then add it in front of something else and adding it, if you add a list L in front of another list L prime, the time taken is proportional to the length of L. Okay. Here is another example. Concat is just folder plus plus of empty list and so on. Okay. So then we looked at folder 1. We said that sometimes there is no natural value to assign to the empty list. Like for instance, if you want to compute minimum or maximum. Minimum, remember, is something that, let us say, RD implies list A, arrow A. Okay, so you give it a list of elements of type A, it will return an element of type A, and the element will be the minimum element in the list. But what if the list is an empty list? Then you can't make arbitrary choices. So one way out is to say that my function is not defined on the empty list at all. In which case you will just say folder 1. Okay, and actually it is nice to use folder 1 because even if you want to return a maybe value, suppose I want to define minimum to be suppose this is what I want, and I might say, okay, if the input is empty, then I will return nothing. But if the input is non-empty, then I will recursively oh. Okay, so you will say, okay, so I'll recursively do the minimum of the tail, and then if the minimum of the tail is nothing, which means that the tail was empty, then the minimum is just the head of the list, just X. Otherwise, you have to find out the minimum between the minimum of the tail and this, etc. You have to explicitly do this case, etc., etc. Even in this case, you will see that folder 1 is easy to use, right? So you could just say minimum of a new minimum. If you want to do, you could just say minimum min I don't know, my minimum prime, let me call it, of empty list is nothing, and minimum prime of xs, I know that xs is non-empty, therefore I can just say just of minimum of xs. Yeah, you see that no, just of folder one of, sorry, folder one of min on xs. Okay, so this is how, even in cases where you have to show slightly different behavior, you see the value in using folder one, right? Because you don't need to go and explicitly do this case check every time. You know that it is non-empty, then you do it that way. Okay, is this clear? Yeah, how folder one can be used even when you want to handle empty list. You handle that separately, but for non-empty list, you do something like this. You use folder one and then wrap it around with something, just or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so this we did. Right, and then we saw this sometimes that you will have a problem with folding from the right, and the classical example we gave was string to num. Okay, you have something like 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and if you want to convert it to the actual number 2, 4, 5, 6, 8. Okay, the thing on the left is a string, and the one way to do it would be to convert the tail and then try to add the digit 2 to the front. But adding to the front is always a problem, right? Because you have to now compute how many digits there are actually in my current number, and then I have to multiply my digit by 10 to the power that, etc., etc. That's a little more work. It's better to do it from the left. I currently have 245, and then I have 68. Now I want to add 6 to the right of 245. What do I do? I multiply 245 by 10 and add it to 6. Okay, that is what this is doing. You do fold from the left, and the function that you use is it takes one argument, which is the accumulator, let us say, where you accumulate the number, and another argument, which is a character, and all you do is you do 10 times the number plus convert from digit to int of the character c, and then you do that, and the initial value is 0. Okay, and fold L, if you want, goes from the left, and this is the thing. Fold L, it again takes a function, a value, and an initial value, and the list. Okay, and it gives a return value. On the empty list, you are just returning the initial value. Here is the important thing. So if you want to do fold L FV of x colon xs, you don't recursively do a fold L and then combine it with the first element. Rather, you so folder recursive computation on tail, combine with first element. Fold L, modify accumulator, and then call recursive, and then make recursive call. Your initial accumulator will be some simple value like 0 or whatever you want the result to be on the empty list. But as you make a recursive call, you don't make a recursive call and then come back and combine. You modify the accumulator and then make a recursive call. Okay, so you keep carrying an accumulator around, and that is what this is showing, if you can see. Yeah, this thing. So you modified the accumulator here and then make the recursive call. Okay, fine. So folder fold L, we have already spent 2 classes on it, but it's okay. It is good to know these things. And string to num was the standard example, and you will see that, yes, so we saw this example of how string to num actually evaluates. Okay, so at every point of time you will have a current value with you, and then the rest of the string. But the point is that you won't have a current value with you. You will always have an expression. Only at the very end will you have a value. Okay, this is a problem with both fold L and folder. Okay, which is what we want to look at next. Folder, recall that if you do folder fv of x1, x2, dot 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 till xn, you will first make a recursive call and then combine with x1. But that itself involves making a recursive call and then combining with x2. This itself involves making a recursive call and then combining with x3, and so on and so forth. Ultimately, you will have a chain of combinations that are pending. You want to combine using f, but that's all pending till the final recursive call returns. The final recursive call, this will return the value v, and then you will slowly compute your result. Okay, so there is a chain of pending combines that are waiting till the final recursive call comes back. So you might think that fold L, because it changes the accumulator, is likely to be better, but no, because fold L also, remember, Haskell is lazy, and unless you're forced to do a computation, Haskell won't do it. So fold L will not have an accumulator as a value, but it will have an the accumulator as an expression. Okay, so here is an example for fold R. If you do with plus and 0 as the initial value, you do all this, finally you will have an expression like this, which will then be converted to your 50-50 after some number of steps. Fold, okay, so yes, but there is one thing. If f needs both inputs, it will be applied only at the end. That is one thing. But sometimes f might not need both inputs, and that is, we'll come to that in a bit, maybe in 15-20 minutes. Saving grace. Sometimes f needs only the first arg. In which case you don't need to do the recursive call to fold R at all. Okay, and that will show up in a bit. Okay. But anyway, the important point is that there is a need to carry huge expressions around. Okay. Okay. Fold L, like I said, goes from the left. You maintain an accumulator, but the accumulator is not a value. This is also an expression. A partially evaluated expression. Okay, so you might need to carry, you might need to use large amounts of memory while you are on your way to computing some value. Like, yeah, right. Fold L from the left of 1.100 using initial value 0 and plus, you will eventually get a huge expression like this, which will then be converted to a number. Okay, over many steps. Okay. Same problem as with fold R. So therefore, you use fold L prime, which I introduced. You have to do import data.list if you are using fold L prime. Okay, and yes, really what it does is it carries not this thing, but the accumulated original value. That's a value. This whole thing is also a value because no, sorry. Yeah. This is also a value, or at least the point is this is evaluated. This is the okay. You're saying y is nothing but fvx, so y will be evaluated as fvx first, and then only you will say, okay, now modify the accumulator to be f of y-axis. Yes, somebody had a question.
Yes, I think your screen's frozen for me. I'm not sure if it's for anyone else.
Frozen. So is it frozen for
no,
everyone?
it's fine. No, it's fine. No, it's
yeah, it seems to be frozen. Let me just move back and forth. Yeah, now it's fine, right?
Yes, I know it's fine.
Okay. Okay, good. So this is the thing. So I mentioned fold L prime. So the point is, use fold R. Fold R is the most natural thing. Sometimes you will need fold L, but if you want to use fold L prime instead. Okay, because fold L prime will also save on memory. Okay. Okay, great. So let's forget the sequence. Sequence is basically something which you look at the type of sequence, it's A arrow, B arrow, B. All it is doing is it is returning the second argument. It is not doing anything at all. Okay. But before returning the second argument, it will evaluate the first argument. Okay. So if you want to think about it, these expressions are all like trees. Okay. So, so let me add a. Where are we? Okay, so think of this as some huge expression, something, you know, you have some plus 0. So yeah, let's say initially you have 0, right? So fold R of fold L, let us say. Let us say this. Okay, what will happen is this? What will happen is that this will be nothing but fold L of plus applied to 0 and 1, and then you will say 2 dot dot 5. Also plus is the function. This is nothing but fold L of plus is the function, and then you'll have to combine this expression with 2. So you will actually have, so instead of writing it in prefix, I'll write it as infix because it will be easier to read for you. So just give me a second. So and this will be 0 plus 1 plus 2. And then 3 dot dot 5. This is nothing but fold L of you see the idea? You will keep on growing this expression like this. At this point, you will just return this expression. Okay, and then if you want to print this value, then that will trigger the evaluation of all the pluses. Okay, so this is the original thing. Whereas fold L prime, what it does is the following. It will first say, okay, so the first thing says, okay, fold L prime of 0 plus 1, 2 dot dot 5. This, when you now go, normally fold L would have done, right? So this is what would have happened. But if you go back a slide, you will see that you do the sequencing. Okay, and before the sequencing, how do you sequence it? You want to write fold L prime of fyx's. That's what you want to write. But before you do that, you do y equals f of bx. Okay, so the y equals f of bx will actually be evaluated before you write fold L prime of fyx's. Okay, so what happens even in this step is, even in this first step is that the y will be evaluated. Y meaning f of vx. X in this case is 1, v is 0, f is plus. Okay, that will be first evaluated, and when you evaluate it, it will actually become 1. Sorry, so you'll say fold L prime of plus of 1, 2 dot dot 5. When you make the next call, you will again first evaluate f of vx. V now is 1, x is 2, so you will actually evaluate it. So it will become fold L prime of plus 3, 4 dot dot 5. Right, 3 dot dot 5. Then it will become fold L prime of plus of 6, 4 dot dot 5. Then that will be fold L prime of plus of 10, 5, which will be fold L prime of plus of 15 empty list, which will just be 15. Okay, you see how this is much more efficient, and you are actually doing an eager version of whatever Haskell would normally do. Okay, this is just to tell you some little bit about the internals. Don't need to worry about it. Just note that if you have to use fold L, consider using fold L prime. Okay, might not matter for simple evaluating some small examples, but it might very well matter for huge computations. So we can actually try to check now that I am connected to this thing, etc. So let us just try to just GHCI, nothing much more fancy than that. Let me just try. Just let's see how much the difference between fold L and fold L prime will be. Yeah. Okay, so fold L of so let's give some ridiculously large thing. Fold L of plus on 0, 1 dot dot 100,000 is this, right? That's 100,000. Okay, even this does not. At some point of time you will see that it creates a problem. 2 seconds is large actually. Let's try fold L prime instead. Oh, you can already see the difference, right? Both in terms of the amount of time it takes, as well as the memory that is used. Okay, so yeah, so this is the point. So you can even give even more ridiculous values if you want. Yeah, and if even this takes this much time, fold L on this will take a lot of time. As will fold R. Okay. So this is an annual tradition with me and the Haskell course where I'll use some fold L on some very large numbers and it will strain my computer a lot. So yes. Oh, see, good. You see that you actually see the first instance of an exception stack overflow. Stack overflow is saying basically some kind of memory has run out of some kind of memory. Okay. So okay.
Sir?
Yes.
I have a doubt. First, no. Back to the slides, sir.
Yes,
I have a doubt.
Yes, please ask.
So the sequence, the type is A, B, B, right? So is it the same A like used in fold L prime? Like, is it the
no, so the fold L prime is actually doing something with the first argument. You see, A arrow, B arrow, B, it will be something like plus or this or that. In sequencing, you basically evaluate the first argument, okay, and then evaluate the second argument and return the second argument. The first argument is not used, but the main point is sometimes the second argument, the expression itself will use the first argument. See here, the second argument is fold L prime Fyxs, and the y is also the first argument. Okay, so the first argument will be evaluated first. It's some internal thing. Okay, it is just to ensure that certain things are evaluated quickly, like in these example I showed. It has nothing. The sequencing is only ensuring that before you make a call to fold L prime plus something here 2 dot dot 5, you evaluate this first argument completely. Okay, that is the main job of it. And then before you make another fold L prime call, you evaluate this completely. Okay, it is to ensure that. Okay, so don't worry, you will never ever need to use this SCQ function directly in your programs. Okay, at least in my course. But if you have to use fold L, you will sometimes use fold L prime. Okay, this is just to tell you that there are these subtleties here. Okay, it might not even be that you will require to use fold L prime very heavily in maybe in the exercises that I give you or whatever. Okay, But
Ah.
okay. Yeah. Okay. So moving on. Yeah, this is just telling you how fold L prime works. We saw this last time, and you see that these numbers are evaluated as you go. Okay. Now coming back to this point, so which I said that fold R might, the function f in fold R might sometimes not require the second argument, in which case you don't need to make the recursive call, and that allows you to do fold R on infinite lists. Okay, even though it looks like it is stupidity, because fold R, remember the definition of fold R. Fold R of fb x colon x's is nothing but f applied to x and then fold R of fb x's. Okay, so you have to make the recursive call and then combine it with this. But remember, it is just a figure of speech when I say you have to make the recursive call first and then combine it. Haskell will not do it that way. Okay, Haskell will always try to look at the outermost function that you need to compute. If you have a large expression, it will start at the topmost, at the outermost level. So if you have something like 2 plus 5 into 3 plus 6 divided by 2 into 7 or some such, it won't do the components first and then go to the overall thing. It will say, what do I have to do? I have to divide two things. Okay, but I can apply division properly only on fully evaluated things. So what do I have on the left? I have two things that need to be multiplied to get a fully evaluated thing. Okay, so let me do that. But multiplication also requires fully evaluated arguments. So let me evaluate this. Let me evaluate this, and then it will get it will get 7, and then it will get 9, and then it will multiply. It will get 63, and then it will divide it by. Then it will do 14, and then it will divide 63 by 14. Okay, and then that will be whatever it is, 4.5. Okay, so this is what it will do. That is what Haskell will normally do. Apply the same principle to fold R also. Okay, if f does not require the second argument, this is the important point. If f does not require the second argument, then fold can terminate even on infinite lists. Okay, so for instance, here is a very convoluted way of writing head. Okay, so I'm saying fold R of a function which takes two arguments, ignores the second argument, and returns the first argument. Okay. Okay, this function ignore first argument, return second. Ignore second argument, return first. That is what this is doing. Okay, and therefore, if it is ignoring the second argument, then you don't ever need to evaluate the recursive call, right? So this thing will expand to lambda xy dot x of 1, which is the head value here, and then the recursive call. But then this lambda xy dot x does not require y at all, so you ignore the second argument and you just return 1. Okay, so this is the power of laziness. Laziness allows you to do folds on infinite lists, and fold R is the one that will work. Fold L will not work, because for fold L will not work on infinite lists, because for fold L the outermost call is always the fold L. Okay, and the list component will always be an infinite list, so you will never ever terminate. Okay, fold R is what will terminate, because the outermost call is the F call. Okay, same thing won't work for fold L. Yes, as I have told you here, because fold L prime of lambda xy dot x 0 1 dot dot is nothing but fold L prime of whatever you want to do here. That is the function, and then you will actually evaluate the value. You will evaluate f1. This function lambda xy dot x applied on 0 and 1 will just give you 0. That is fine, but then you have the infinite list here, and the outermost call is always fold L prime, so you will never ever terminate. Okay. So does not work with left folds. Okay, great. And now this is just a curiosity. Okay, what I'll do is I'll let you read it. I'll never ever ask you to do such a thing. For why not? Let me just do it. Okay, just to tell you how you can do some nice, just equational based reasoning. That's all you're doing. You can actually simulate fold L using fold R. Okay, you instead of saying fold del f initial value a and then some list, you can express that as folder of some g and some b. Okay, we'll have to figure out what the g and b is. The g being what we call the let's see. Yes. So yes, instead of talking about folder, instead of talking about fold del f e x, e being the initial value and x is being the list, f being the function that is applied, instead you can simulate it using folder of step. Step is the function that you want to apply and g is the initial value. G itself is function valued. So finally you will describe your, then finally you will say that fold del of f e is nothing but folder of step id. That is where you will end. Okay, but I'll let you go through this equational reasoning on your own. Okay, because it's not really part of your Haskell learning. It is just part of your learning about how you can think about programs, how you can think about other versions of a given program and reason about them using simple equational reasoning. Okay, not complicated, but I'll let you read these slides on your own. Don't worry, I won't ask any of these things in exams or whatever. Don't worry. Okay. So, yes. Yes, you can also simulate fold R using fold L, and that will be similar. You can see that just the step function, the way it will work will differ. I will use some step prime here. You can just use all that, but this is the more important thing that you need to know if you're doing Haskell, and that is that there are some useful functions that are useful to know. Here are these useful functions. One function is called flip. Okay, this flip is a very nice function. All it does is it takes another function as argument. It takes another binary function as argument. This is the binary function it takes as argument. Okay, and it will apply the values in the opposite order. So basically, flip f of xy will be nothing but f of yx. Okay, that is what you need to know. So you are basically flipping the function by making it accept arguments in the other order. And here is an example of what I'll tell you. How do you do reverse using fold del? That's an exercise. Can somebody tell? Let's try to do reverse using fold del. It will actually be more or less the same as your reverse into. So let's try. Let's go to this thing. Okay, I want a reverse using fold del. Fold del prime. Okay, so okay, so I'll have to do an import data.list. Let me do it. And let me explicitly say that I want to import fold del prime. Okay. So will somebody tell me what my reverse I should say?
Sir,
Yes.
it would take me some time to figure out the code exactly, but I think the idea would be that we take the list, we set the initial accumulator value to the empty list,
Yes.
and then we use the colon operator where we flip the arguments. So we do flip.
Exactly. That's all. That's very nice. That's it. Yes, because so let's work through this. Okay, my reverse of that's my reverse, right? My reverse of empty list will be what? Fold del prime of So instead of calling it flip colon, I'll call it G. Okay, where just to save space. Okay. This should be what? What is fold L prime of FV empty list? Srimati?
Folded prime of
FV empty list.
V.
V in this case is empty list.
Empty list. So,
So
empty
we
list.
should just get empty list. Okay. So myrev of this is the this you will see is nothing but fold L prime of G empty list X colon XS, but that is nothing but fold L prime of G, and then you have to modify the accumulator value. You modify the accumulator value by saying G empty list X XS this much is clear, right? You will use the same function G, you will modify the accumulator. But what is G empty list X? Let's go fold L prime of G flip colon empty list X XS. But this is nothing. What is flip of anything? Flip f of xy is nothing but f of yx. I told you, right? Because you are just instead of, so just to make it clear, I'll put parenthesis here. So G itself is nothing but flip colon. But flip colon applied on some AB is the same as f applied on flip f applied on AB is nothing but f applied on BA. So this will simplify to fold L prime of G of X colon, the colon operator applied to X and empty list. Now everything is fine. Okay, then you will say, okay, this is nothing but good. So should we try one more iteration of this? Let us say x1, x2, x3 is what you have here. Okay, this is what we have. So we'll bypass all these steps and say that, okay, fold L prime of x1, x2, x3 equals fold L prime of list x1, x2, x3. Is it clear? Just by what we saw here, x is x1, xs is the list x2, x3. But now here is the important thing. Instead of calling it this, so instead of looking from my reverse, if I look at, so instead of having the list empty list there, if I have any list L there, which is our accumulator list, then what will you have here? Instead of empty list, it will be L, right? And instead of empty list, it will be L here also. And instead of empty list, it will be L here also. But then this is nothing but X colon L, right? Okay, now we are in business. So now this is my L. When I make this fold L call, that is my L, and x2 is just this x2. My x is just x2. So what will this become now? Can somebody tell?
So it'll be x2 colon x1 and then x.
Exactly. x2 colon x1 which I will write as x2 comma x1 and then just x3, which will be nothing but but when it is empty list, you just return the accumulator value, right? Whatever value you have. Oh, I should also say fold L prime of G, I should write everywhere. I forgot. Okay, so
No, and shouldn't it be G empty list and then X1, X2?
right, that is true. I'll write it. Yes, good point. Great. Okay, good. Okay, is this fine? Finally, this is what? If you notice, this is nothing but that reverse into that we talked about earlier. Okay, this fold L prime of G, whatever accumulator and list, is nothing but reverse into. Okay, and the initial call we made was with some empty list as argument, so that is what is happening here. So this is how you reverse a list, and the point being that you use flip, which is a very useful thing. Okay, sometimes whatever you do using fold R, if you want to do it with fold L, sometimes you might have to do a flip of that. Okay, so I think which is the point that I want to make here. Flip F behaves like F but accepts the argument in reverse order. So for instance, flip of colon applied on 1.10 and 0 will be 0.10. Okay, so colon itself operates the value first and the list next. Flip colon accepts the list first and then the value next as argument. The argument order is reversed. Okay, so typically you can always say, instead of saying fold R FVL, you can always change it to fold L of flip F of VL. Okay, so this will always work for functions where it will work. Okay, there are other useful functions like const. Remember that we used this function where we had lambda xy dot x, where we did not even care about what y was. That function you call it const. Okay, sorry. Okay, so that's called const. This is the constant x function. Okay, no matter what argument it receives, it will always return the constant x. Okay, and then dollar we have already seen, instead of writing f and some expression within parentheses, you can write f dollar x. And any of these operators, you can always put parentheses and put in between. And like dollar, you can use a dollar bang, and dollar bang will do the eager version. But if you want it, okay, this is just, I'm telling you because it is there. Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, great. So I mean, based on this, you can actually show some arguments for finite lists, etc., etc. Like for instance, you can simplify this whole thing and say that fold L of F is nothing but flip of fold R step ID, where step whatever equals this. For finite lists, you can actually prove this, but it doesn't matter. Okay. You can express fold R using fold L and fold L using fold R, etc. But I mean, this is just for people who are interested. You can just read the slides and work it out. And if you have a doubt, ask me. Okay. Now we have like 15-20 minutes, and that is always the correct time to introduce some new topic which requires your concentration. But don't worry, I won't take more than 15 minutes because I haven't had lunch yet. I'll have lunch only after the class. Okay, good. So we've been looking at lots of things now. So we said, oh, that is n squared, this is n log n, and things like that. So let us make it all precise. Okay, how do you measure efficiency, or how do you measure how a program runs? Okay, in Haskell, computation is nothing but reduction. Okay, so all you need to do is if I have start with an expression, how many times do I need to keep rewriting till I end at a point where I don't need to rewrite anymore? Okay, that is all you need to worry about. Okay, so application of definition is nothing but applying. You rewrite an expression to another expression. You have one expression, you change its form to another expression. How many rules do you apply is all that you care about. Okay, so you need to count the number of what is called reduction steps or rewrite steps. And running time, we'll usually call it T of n. Okay, and we will measure running time for not on every input, but on the for every input size. We'll see why. Okay, so running time is usually expressed in terms of the length of the input, not in terms of just the input itself. Okay. For instance, here is the complexity of plus plus. This I keep telling. Attaching one list to another takes time proportional to the length of the first list. Okay, and we can see clearly why it is so. Okay, so the code for plus plus is this: empty list plus plus y's is nothing but y's. X colon x's plus plus y's is recursively do x's plus plus y's and then stick x to the front. Okay, so this is the recursive call. Yeah, recursively compute x plus plus y's and then stick x to the front. Yes. So let's look at this. 1 2 3 plus plus 4 5 6 is one. Stick 1 to the front of 2 3 plus plus 4 5 x. But what is 2 3 plus plus 4 5 x? Stick 2 in front of 3 plus plus 4 5 x. But what is that itself? This thing. You stick 3 in front of empty list plus plus 4 5 x. Finally, empty list plus plus 4 5 x is nothing but 4 5 x. So you have 1 colon 2 colon 3 colon 4 5 6. Okay. And now, how many times is the first rule applied? This rule is applied once. How many times is this rule applied? Okay, it's applied n times where n is the length of the first list. Okay, this is clear. So the complexity of plus plus or the time taken by plus plus is nothing but, to compute x's plus plus y's, use the second rule length of x's times and the first rule once. Okay, so that is one thing. Here is another example. This is the asking when x is an element of x's. Okay. Okay, so you want to check whether I is an element of a list. Elim I of empty list is false. Elim I of x colon x's is nothing but check whether I equals x or elim I x's. Okay, this is the simple thing. So for instance, now element, you want to check whether 3 is an element of 2 3 7 8 9. You will make a recursive call. So 3 is not equal to 2. So therefore you will make the recursive call elim 3 3 7 8 9. But 3 is equal to 3, so you can stop. Okay, and this relies on the fact that R is what is called a short circuiting operator. Meaning that if you want to do B1 or B2, if B1 is true, do not even evaluate B2. Right? And the definition of, and that is nothing very mysterious, because the definition of R is just that true or anything equals true, false or B equals B. Okay, this is the definition of R. So therefore, the moment the first argument is true, it will stop. Okay, so it will not make the recursive call. Once you see elim 3 3 7 8 9, it will check that 3 is equal to 3, that evaluates to true, so the whole thing will evaluate to true. Okay, element of 3 in 2 4 7 8 9 will be elim 3 4 7 8 9, which will be elim 3 7 8 9, which will be elim 3 8 9, which will be elim 3 and 9, which will be elim of 3 in empty list, which will be false. Now here is an example where the time taken for the number of rules, the number of reduction steps that you have, the number of steps taken. Time is number of steps. The number of steps taken depends not only on the input size, but on the input itself. If the input is 23789, then you will take 2 steps. If the input is 24789, then you will take 6 steps. Okay. And in general, you will take as many number of steps as the position of the value you are seeking in the list. Okay, because you have to go past all the unequal elements and then finally hit the equal to case and then stop there. Okay. But even though there are variations across inputs, it is convenient to express running time or the number of steps taken as a function of the input length, the length of the input size, the size of the input. Okay. And that is called worst case complexity. Worst case complexity means for every length of the input, for every size of the input, consider the maximum time it will taken for it will take maximum number of steps taken by this function on any input of that size. Okay, so that is what you mean by worst case complexity. Maximum running time equals number of steps taken by program over all inputs of size n. Okay, this is what you want to calculate. And even in this, and this is pessimistic, agreed, may be rare in some cases, but may not be rare. So if you want a more realistic estimate, you should try to look at average case complexity. But average case complexity is difficult to compute because you need to know the input distribution, etc., etc. It is mathematically much harder to compute. And so clearly, if in many cases, if you say that, okay, my pessimistic estimate itself is that this function will run in time proportional to the square of the length of the input, and you might be willing to live with it. Okay, even if my pessimistic estimate is this, on average, it might be much faster. I will not be able to calculate it precisely because I might not have the mathematical tools enough to do that. But I'm willing to just go with this. It is fine as long as the pessimistic estimate is this much. Okay, because then on average, it is only going to be better. Okay, and even when you are looking at worst case complexity, you are interested in what is called asymptotic complexity. That is because you are only interested in rate of growth. Okay, you are not interested in the precise number of steps taken by the function on every input or input size, but all you are interested in, as the input size increases, how does the worst case number of steps okay, how does the worst case number of steps needed increase? Okay, or in other words, rate of growth. You are interested in the rate of growth of the number of steps needed function. Okay, so because and you are interested only in this because I might run my program on some laptop, you might run your program on a supercomputer. So the precise number of steps needed and the precise time required might differ, but on both a supercomputer and a reasonable laptop, it will always be the case that if your rate of growth is exponential, let us say, exponential is much worse than quadratic. Okay, this is true both of a supercomputer and a laptop. Okay, and so this is sort of the bigger picture. Okay, okay, so technically speaking, you will say that a function f is in you should say belongs to, but you will say equals order of Gn. This is just a abuse of notation. You want to say that f of n belongs to order of Gn if there is some constant k and a number n such that beyond a number, this n is talking about the input size. Beyond the input size n, you will see these kind of effects. Beyond for any input size small n greater than or equal to capital N, you will see that f of n is less than or equal to k times g of n. Okay, so some constant times g of n. In which case you will say that f of n is order of g of n. Okay, here is an example. For instance, a n squared plus b n plus c, which is a nice quadratic this thing polynomial, which is you will just say it is order n squared. Why? Because you can take your k to be the constant mod a plus mod b plus mod c, the absolute value of a plus absolute value of b plus absolute value of c, and then you will see that a n squared plus b n plus c is always less than or equal to this. Okay, so this you can sit and verify for n is greater than or equal to 0 even. Maybe not 0, but whatever, greater than or equal to 1. Yes, so basically you are ignoring constant factors, you will ignore lower order terms. Okay, and if you do that, okay, and typical complexities that you will encounter are order n log n, order n to the k, where again typically a k will be 2 or 3. Okay, and order 2 to the n. Okay, things like that. And yeah, so clearly order n log n is better than order n squared. Order 2 to the n is much worse than all these, etc. Okay, so if you, so formally stating the complexity of plus plus that we looked at earlier is, you will say that the complexity of plus plus is order n, where n is the length of the first list. Okay, and the complexity of element, the elim function, is order n again, because it's actually n plus 1. Here also it's n plus 1. For plus plus it's n plus 1, but then you call it order n. For lm it is less than or equal to n plus 1. It could go all the way up to n plus 1, or it could just be 1 itself, but worst case is n, so you'll just say order n. Worst case is n plus 1, so you'll say order n. Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll stop now. Okay, it's been not a, it's, the class has only been close to an hour, but yeah, I'll do reverse and then do it. Okay, I'll do reverse. Here is the naive reverse that we normally do. Reverse of empty list is empty list. Reverse of x colon x is reverse of x is plus plus x. Okay, but we already know that plus plus, the complexity is time, number of steps needed is okay. So where n is the length of reverse of x's. Okay, so this much we know. So if you want to write a recurrence for this, then you will say that, so here is how you actually compute the time complexity. You will say that t of 0, where 0 is the length of the empty list. So t of 0 is 1, because you directly apply this rule and you are done. T of n, you will have to recursively this t of n minus 1 is recursive application of reverse. On x's. Okay, if x colon x's is of length n, x's is going to be of length n minus 1. Okay, and what is this plus n? This is the time needed for, or number of steps needed for. I'll say time and number of steps interchangeably. Time needed for plus plus reverse x's plus plus. Why is it n? Because x's itself is of length n minus 1 and the time taken is n minus 1 plus 1. Okay, which is nothing but n. Okay, so overall your recurrence relation is t of 0 equals 1 and t of n equals t of n minus 1 plus n. Now, if you when you eventually do the algorithm course, etc., you will see how to in general work out the solution of such problems, etc. But in our first programming course, we will just say that you will figure out the solution by just expanding the recurrence and identifying patterns. Okay, the way you do it is to say that, okay, t of n is t of n minus 1 plus 1. But what is t of n minus 1? That is nothing but t of n minus 2 plus n minus 1. What is that? That itself is just t of n minus 3 plus n minus 2. If you keep on doing it, finally you will eventually end up at saying that, okay, I'll go all the way till t of 0 plus 1. Okay, because t of n minus 1 plus n. So go all the way till t of 0 plus 1. But when you do it, you will have all the values. You see n minus 2 plus n minus 1 plus n. Eventually, you will have 1 plus whatever all the way till n. And t of 0 itself is 1. So you will have 1 plus this whole thing. 2 plus 3 plus whatever all the way till n. That is nothing but 1 plus n into n plus 1 by 2. But again, as I said, ignore constant factors, lower order terms, etc. So this whole thing is order n squared. Okay. So the naive reverse that we have is order n squared. Yes, yes.
But here we are actually getting the closed form of Tn, right? So in some algorithm.
Yeah, if you get the closed form, it's fine. But if you want to convey this information to someone else, it is much better to say that the growth rate is order n squared than to say that actual closed term, etc. Because it really doesn't matter. All you care about is what is the growth rate.
Okay, sir. But my question was: is there any algorithm where we can't actually find the closed formula for Tn, but actually get the growth rate? So
I suppose you can. You might, in doing this calculation here, we made there will be some, because along the way you will make some approximations. Okay, if you do that, then it will never be then you can only give upper bound or whatever.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so here is a better reverse, which I call reverse into empty list, but as we now know, you can also call it this reverse into of any list is nothing but reverse into is nothing but fold L prime of flip colon. That's all. Okay, if you want, you can call it that. And but in any case, it is good to look at the definition, because what is the complexity of reverse into a x's? Let's look at that. Let n be the length of x's, then t of n, where n is x colon, n is the length of x colon x's, is nothing but you make one recursive call. That's all. You make one recursive call. So t of n minus 1. But before you make a recursive call, you modify the accumulator. See, this is the difference between in the case where if you do a fold-R method, you will make a recursive call, come back and do some modification. Here you are modifying an accumulator and then making a recursive call, but that is fine. There is only one recursive call. And how much effort do you need to perform to modify your accumulator? Some one step, because you're just adding something using a colon. Okay, so your Tn is nothing but Tn minus 1 plus 1. What will happen if you expand this recurrence? And your t of 0 is just 1, let us say. So if you expand
1 plus 1.
1 or some such. Okay, because it's nothing but t of n minus 1 plus 1. T of n minus 1 is nothing but t of n minus 2 plus 1, and so on and so forth. You keep on expanding some, finally you'll say order n. Okay, so I think I'll stop with this, because the next topic we are going to talk about is sorting. Okay, which we'll start in a new class. Okay, and that is an important algorithm. You all know how it is important. We'll look at a couple of algorithms for sorting, its complexity, etc., etc. Okay, so any questions thus far in today's class? So it has been a little low on actual code written, but I suppose we've just, much of the class was just spent in reviewing folds, but it is okay because we missed a class in between, and folds are important topics. By the way, sorry, after doing all this, I forgot to add in the slide, as well as forgot to mention. Let me create a new this thing. I'll try to modify the slides, and then or you can do it yourself. Where do I write? I need to go to the end. Oh, gee. Why am I wasting all of our times like this? Let me just go to GHCI and show you what it is. That's much better. You're able to see the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So sorry. Oh my God. Controller, includes. Write it first. Okay, so fold R. Oh, this problem still persists. I don't know. It's okay. Okay, so this says, so instead of TA, read it as list A. Okay. What is it that I'm supposed to do? Oh, colon. Sorry, very sorry. Something needs to be done with this. Okay, is this clear? So I have fold L, which will do this. Instead, you have another function which is closely related to fold L. First of all, there is also a fold R1, fold L1, which is just like fold R1. Okay, so when you don't have a meaningful initial value, you take the first value as the initial value. That is fold L1. Okay, but there is also this nice thing, scan R. Okay, so it is basically doing the same function, some initial value, list of values, but it produces a list of values. And what it produces is the list of all the intermediate values that it computes till now. So to see the difference, folder of, let's use folder of plus 0, 1 dot 10. Yeah, the initial value is 0, then it adds 0, then it does 10 plus 0, then it does 9 plus 10 plus 0, then it does 8 plus and so on. This is folder. Okay, but if you do scan R, oh, I'm doing the same mistake again. Okay, so you will get the values 0, 10, 9, etc. So let's see how you do. Okay, so you get it in the reverse order itself. So it will say, okay, originally I did 0, then I did 10 plus 0, then I did 9 plus 10 plus 0, then I did 8 plus 9 plus 10 plus 0, then I did 6 plus or whatever, 7 plus that, then 6 plus that, 5 plus that, finally my value is here. So this is scanning from the right. You're scanning from the right, you're combining, but also you're producing all the intermediate values. Okay, this is useful in some cases. And similar to fold L, you have scanl. So if you do scanl of you will get it from the left. So you'll say, oh, originally my initial value is 0, then I do 0 plus 1, then I do 0 plus 1 plus 2, then I do 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, so yeah, so just remember that just like fold R and fold L, you can also do scan R and scan. Okay, fine. So I'll stop with this. And any questions so far? When we meet next, we'll start on sorting. Yes, Srimati?
Yeah, so no, just a quick question, sir. So
Yes, yes.
the time complexity, whatever we talked about, that's only to get the final expression or after like evaluating?
Okay. You're asking, oh, if I have a sequence of pluses to do I also take into account how much time will it take to do all the plus and bring it down to a single number? Is that what
Yeah.
your question is?
Yeah.
I think here we just are talking about just the final expression.
Okay,
We'll sort of assume that the built-in operators all happen quickly. But though your question is right, sometimes if you want a more precise answer, you'll have to look at that also. Okay, but
yes.
notice that if you have done a fold L of a list on some large list and you got a huge expression, let us say, you will anyway need order n. Let's say you need an order n time to build the expression. The worst thing that is going to happen is that you will need order n time to evaluate the expression. So that is just a factor of 2. So you can ignore it most cases. But I agree. In some cases, you might not be able to ignore it, in which case you'll have to do some more. But the general principle is that if you are actually building a large expression, you would have already spent enough time. So evaluating that expression is only going to take as much time.
Maybe
As
like-
long as the functions are simple, like plus, times, etc.
Yeah, sir. That's it.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. How is the rains in your place? In your places? It's been raining non-stop here. So see you then. Yeah. Yes. Anybody else has Milan call? You have rains in your place too?
No, sir.
Okay. Where are you?
Kerala.
Oh, Kerala, it is not raining, and Chennai it is raining. Okay. Rare case.
So
Okay.
it was raining a little bit in Bangalore. At least it was quite foggy yesterday because of the cyclone.
Okay. And who's this? Gautam? No.
No, sir, this is Anand.
Swaminathan. No. Anand, what?
Baliwada.
Okay. You are in Bangalore. Okay, great. Okay, see you then. Yeah. So, yes, hope you all had a nice Deepavali. So, see you then. Yeah. So, see you on Thursday. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
you,
sir.
sir.
Yeah. Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
sir.
Thanks a lot. Sure.